Hey everybody, welcome back. I've been getting quite a few questions about rigging a Tenkara rod as well as casting tips and things like that. So that's what I thought I would do for this video. I'm going to give you my top 5 tips for improving your casting or learning how to cast, more or less. These tips are kind of a general casting tips, more for unweighted or traditional, if you will, Tenkara, kind of what it's intended for, not so much with the heavy bead heads that I do fish a lot and talk about in my oval Belgian cast video that I made, but this is more of a traditional when I'm using an unweighted fly. And the first tip has to do with gripping your rod. And I should point out that you can see a lot of this information. This is nothing I came up with on my own. Some things that worked for me, a lot of things that I read about and also watched on videos. Tenkara USA is a great place to see some very basic videos. If you like a lot more detailed, Discover Tenkara has a lot of great information and a lot of free information as well as information you can purchase and videos and things like that. So the first tip I have has to do with the grip. For me, after watching videos and fishing for quite a while, I tend to have my index finger up front. Not necessarily right on top, but a little off to the side. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is it seems natural where you're pointing. And another is that I had read about is it kind of limits how far back you're going to go. If you're using your wrist, you can go all the way back. But if you're using your finger kind of on top, it limits it. Your wrist doesn't want to bend that much. That would be my first tip, and it's going to help you with some of the follow-on tips. The second piece of advice I would give is keeping your elbow in and kind of your forearm in line with your upper arm, and it's going to help you keep an accurate cast and in line, as well as keeping your elbow in will prevent you from getting tired. A lot of times, especially when I'm European style nymphing or tight lining and things like that, you want to hold or you're trying to reach out, and that's going to wear on you over time. So keeping that elbow in a very relaxed position can really help your endurance. I should also have mentioned that the same with your grip. Don't gorilla grip it. Just light but firm, but a relaxed grip is going to help you as well. So that's number 2. The third tip for me was helpful in making the transition from a traditional or a conventional rod and reel. And that has to do with a conventional rod and reel, kind of if you think about it, that your loop, if you will, the line is kind of parallel to the ground when you're casting and double hauling and all that kind of stuff, and you're using a lot more arm motion. But you don't want that parallel. You want an angle with a Tenkara rod. And there are some instances with a conventional rod and reel where you do that. If you have something behind you that's low, you're kind of casting up and down more rather than parallel, and that's really what you want to focus on with a Tenkara rod. It's not a parallel line of motion or plane, it's an angle. The fourth tip kind of blends the first couple things together with your grip, your motion with your forearm and upper arm, and more of an elbow chop. And you're going to have to kind of find what works for you as far as how much wrist or how much forearm, but it's not a lot of motion. And to get that angle that I talked about is you want to stop high around that 12 o'clock position, and you can know that your rod tip is going to go a little bit further, but up high and then stop high. So it's not much of a motion at all. You're going to get that angle that you're looking for and to help roll that fly down and be able to get that fly first landing. The last tip I'm going to provide kind of puts all the earlier tips together into one, and that's aiming close. Rather than, again, with a conventional rod and reel, you're shooting it out there kind of into the horizon, and then it's drifting down and dropping onto the water. That's not what you want to do with Tenkara. Obviously, you want to fly first, landing on the water. You want that angle, and you want kind of a chopping motion with your forearm and your wrist. So by stopping high and aiming close, you're going to be able to hit your fly first without the line sagging and dragging the fly back to you. If you aim too far away, a couple things can happen. You can your line's going to go out there and kind of flutter down, kind of a pile up cast, or if you do hit fly first, the sag of the line is going to drag it back to you. So it's kind of a continuation of that angle that I talk about and being able to drop the fly down. One of the ways to kind of gauge where you want to cast or where you want to aim is when you do get it out there, however you want to get it out there, get your rod tip up and kind of look at where my rod is at an angle, and that's where I want to stop roughly on the cast. And then where does your line naturally drape to where it's not pulling the fly? And that's kind of your sweet spot of where you want to aim for on your next cast as well. But the idea is to land your fly first, keep your line off the water, and you're fishing right as soon as that fly touches. Now, how far that aiming spot is going to depend on a lot of variables. How long my rod is, how long my line is, how heavy the line is, perhaps the wind direction, and so on. So each case or each instance or setup that you have may be a little bit different on where that aiming spot is. And my kind of bonus tip, which isn't really a tip, but everybody knows, is you need to practice. And one of the things I do, I take a frying pan because I'm not as accurate as I'd like to be. So I take a frying pan and I go out in the driveway and I have a practice line with a big kabari on it, and I just cut the hook point off. So it's on my cement driveway and I'm just trying to cast into that frying pan, and if I can't see it too well, that fly or the hook being metal will make a noise. I'll hear it hitting the frying pan. And ideally, if you get better, smaller pot, smaller plate or something like that, and keep that target going down. So it really helps you gauge the distance that you're trying to hit, and obviously a repeatable motion, and being able to get that fly to hit right where you're looking at every time. A quick summary of those tips would be: keep your index finger forward on your grip, a relaxed grip. Keep that elbow in. Stop high on both directions, on the back cast as well as the forward cast, and get that angle of your line motion, the loop that you're trying to form, and aiming close to you, not too far away. That was a natural tendency for me, was to try to want to cast it out, and my rod tip would be too low, and then the line hits and fly hits, and then I have to raise everything back up off the water, and that's not what you want. You want that fly to hit first and not come back to you, and you're fishing right from the get-go. If you find these videos helpful, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I'd appreciate it. Thanks.